Hello, bonjour, dobry den. My name is Yvan Baker. I'm the Member of Parliament for Etobicoke Centre. Thank you all very much for being here today. Let me start by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and that this land is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. It's my pleasure to be here with Minister Arif Virani, our Minister of Justice and Attorney General. And I'd also like to thank Kirsti Mathers McHenry, Executive Director of Pro Bono Ontario, for being here, and Olya Sinishin, Canadian Legal Support for Ukrainians Program Lawyer at Pro Bono Ontario. Thank you very much. So we'll have some brief opening remarks, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers. February 24th will mark 2 years since Russia's further brutal invasion of Ukraine. And notwithstanding the courage and the resolve of the Ukrainian people, the situation is dire. And this war is having consequences not just in Ukraine, but around the world and here in Canada. Russia is committing war crimes every day. Millions of people have become refugees and displaced. Hundreds of millions in the global south are facing food shortages and famine. The war is one of the primary causes of food and energy inflation that we face here at home, people face around the world. And the war poses an existential threat to global security and to Canada's security. Now, our government has said that we will stand with the Ukrainian people until they win, that victory is the only option. Victory is the only option for Canada because Ukraine's victory is vital to Canada's security. And it's not just because it's vital to our security, but it's also the only way to stop the tragic humanitarian consequences that I just spoke about. If Russia wins, it won't stop at Ukraine. If Russia wins, Canada, Europe, and the US will be next in defending ourselves against Russian aggression. So every Ukrainian soldier who's fighting on the front lines today is one less Canadian who will have to fight in the future. Every dollar we spend today is millions of dollars less that we will have to spend in the future. Our government understands this, and this is one of the reasons that Canada has been a global leader in supporting Ukraine. So we must support the Ukrainian people until they win, because victory is not only the right thing to do, it is the only option to protect our security, our economy, and our freedom. Today, we're focused on the hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians who have arrived in Canada for refuge and safety, and the close to 1.2 million who've applied to come to Canada. Depuis l'invasion de l'Ukraine en février 2022, le Canada n'a jamais cessé d'appuyer l'Ukraine et son peuple. Nous avons notamment accueilli plus de 200 000 Ukrainiens dans nos villes, nos collectivités et nos cœurs depuis le début de la guerre. Canada has a long history of welcoming refugees and immigrants to our shores. Before coming here and after they arrive, people and families need access to information and resources to help them plan and settle into a new life. This includes the need for legal advice and services, which can be expensive and very complex for people to navigate. And this is especially true for refugees who may be trying to understand a different legal system or understand in an unfamiliar language how they can access the resources that they need. So this is why our government is working to provide increased access to justice and legal services. This includes supporting the work done by organizations like Pro Bono Ontario, which connects volunteer lawyers to people who cannot afford a lawyer or may not understand their rights. For more than 2 decades, this tremendous organization has played a key role in our efforts to improve access to justice by bridging the gap between the justice system and the people that it serves. And now Pro Bono Ontario is joining with counterparts across the country to offer free legal services for Ukrainian nationals seeking refuge in Canada and who are directly affected by the war with Russia. Nous sommes reconnaissants du leadership continu exercé par Pro Bono Ontario. Nous sommes convaincus que cette initiative aidera à fournir à ces personnes les renseignements et le soutien dont elles ont besoin en cette période très difficile. And now I'd like to welcome Minister Arif Virani to provide more details on this announcement.
Thank you very much, Yvan. Hello, bonjour, and dobry den. I want to thank everyone for being with me today, and thank you for joining us on this very important announcement, and also give a warm welcome to Kirsti Mathers McHenry, who is just next to me, as well as Ola, who is here with us, joining us as well. I'm extremely delighted to be here today at St. Volodymyr at this institute for this announcement. This facility is really at the heart of the Ukrainian Canadian community here in Toronto and is deeply relevant to the work that we are promoting today. The timing, as Yvan has mentioned, could not be more significant. This week will mark 2 years since the beginning of Russia's second invasion of Ukraine, the first being in 2014 in Crimea. Ukraine's brave defense against this illegal and unjustified Russian aggression has inspired, and I would actually say has humbled, people in Canada and around the planet. All of us have seen exactly what the authoritarian regime of Putin and its forces is capable of. The butchery of places like Bucha, the kidnapping of children, the indiscriminate bombing of civilian targets. Each week, we unfortunately see fresh examples of what Putin and his henchmen are capable of, and what they fear. They fear opposition from Ukraine. They fear opposition within Russia. That is why the regime unjustifiably imprisoned Alexei Navalny, who was found dead in his cell on Friday of last week. Putin's regime is responsible for that death. So not a day goes by without a stark reminder of why we, as Canadians and as the Canadian government, need to support Ukraine. As Yvan said, it is important for Canada, it is important for the planet. Ukraine is fighting for values that we as Canadians hold dear. We stand with Ukraine, and our government will continue to do so, even as unanimous support for that endeavor is faltering here in Canada. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Trudeau, our commitment as a government will not waver. One major consequence of Russia's aggression has been the displacement of millions of Ukrainians from their homes and from their communities. Hundreds of thousands of those persons who have fled have chosen to come here to Canada. They have been welcomed with open arms by the largest Ukrainian diaspora in the world and by millions of other non-Ukrainians right across the country. For that hospitable welcome, I say to every person in Canada who is opening their doors, Дуже дякую. Thank you very much. They have come through the doors of places like this, St. Volodymyr, to find community and to find support. I have heard their stories, the lives they've left behind, the challenges of navigating a new country, however welcoming it is, however similar the climate is, there are definite challenges to coming across an ocean to a new place. This is a path that I'm somewhat familiar with, as my family came here as refugees some 52 years ago. At that time, we were fleeing Uganda, a place where I was born. I came here as an infant, and my sister was 4. My parents were in their late 20s and early 30s. But everything my mother and father have told me about that journey is that they relied upon and were reliant upon the goodness of strangers and a government that wanted us to succeed in our new home across an ocean. It was stressful and challenging, all the more so when you are navigating a new environment with unfamiliar and complex legal processes. So it is our job as a government to help. It is my job as Minister of Justice to help. One part of this includes providing legal support to Ukrainian nationals who have already arrived in Canada, as well as those looking to come here as they seek safety for themselves and for their loved ones. Ukrainians fleeing persecution need to know where to turn for help and for information as they settle into an unfamiliar setting, whether it's finding a home, finding a job, accessing health care, organizing their finances, or something as simple as sending their kids to school. This means having access to legal supports that are easy to navigate, that help them understand their rights and help them understand the law in this country. In Canada, we are very fortunate to have significant organizations like Pro Bono Ontario, led by Kirsti, standing with me here today. These organizations are dedicated to helping vulnerable people who need legal supports, including Ukrainians seeking refuge. Today, I am very proud to announce that over the next 3 years to Pro Bono Ontario for the Ukrainian Refugee Legal Relief Initiative. We will be providing more than $475,000 to this effort. This substantial contribution connects Ukrainians seeking refuge in Canada with lawyers who can help them with issues such as sponsorship, refugee claims, and work permit questions. Importantly, this initiative is national in scope. It brings together existing provincial pro bono organizations, volunteer lawyers, and community groups that are involved in refugee sponsorship and in settlement work. In addition to setting up and managing a national free telephone hotline, what Pro Bono Ontario will be able to do is also develop culturally sensitive resources for their staff and the volunteers who are working with Ukrainians fleeing persecution. This will help them to better understand a person's life experiences and provide the best support possible in a compassionate and culturally sensitive manner. This initiative also includes creating a web page with legal information and resources in English, en français, and also in Ukrainian to help ensure that there's broad access to reliable information. For that, I say once again, merci beaucoup, thank you, and duji diaku. Ce financement est fourni par l'intermédiaire du programme juridique de partenariat et d'innovation du ministère de la Justice Canada, qui appuie les initiatives visant à assurer un système de justice efficace et équitable pour tous et auquel tous peuvent avoir accès. Notre gouvernement est déterminé à appuyer les initiatives qui fournissent des services juridiques accessibles et opportuns aux personnes dans le besoin. Nous savons que notre société et notre pays sont plus forts lorsque toutes les personnes sont en mesure de comprendre et d'exercer avec confiance l'ensemble de leurs droits et protections juridiques. I want to thank sincerely Pro Bono Ontario and its counterparts for taking on this important, indeed this critical work. Together we are working to support Ukraine and its people while building a justice system that puts individuals' needs at its heart. Thank you, merci beaucoup, and duji diaku.
Thank you very much, Minister, for that important announcement. And what I'd like to do now is invite Kirsti Mathers McHenry from Pro Bono Ontario to say a few words. I'm just going to put that there.
Perfect. Good morning. Pro Bono Ontario is an access to justice charity that was started in 2001 with funding from the Law Foundation of Ontario. Our largest project is a hotline that uses a sophisticated mix of technology, and it allows people to call and get legal services and connect to a lawyer from anywhere in the country. And it indeed allows lawyers from anywhere in the country to log on remotely and provide those services. While we are an Ontario organization, that technology allowed us to act quickly and respond to the need that emerged. We were able to effectively launch this program reasonably quickly, and also are positioned to respond to needs like this that have provincial, regional, national, or even international scope. We knew that many Ukrainians coming into Canada would need legal help. They would have questions about immigration law, about refugee law, and other issues as they got settled and arrived. We also knew that many of them would lack the financial resources to engage paid legal representatives, and we were well positioned to help and happy to answer that call. On June 20th, 2022, we launched a hotline that operates from 12 to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. It offers services in Ukrainian, English, and French, and we also offer interpretation for other languages. Since we launched, we have provided a total of 1,229 consultations to 882 unique individuals. And we've also provided more intensive service to 50 people whose legal needs were simply too complicated to help on the hotline alone. As we anticipated, most of the questions we're getting are around immigration and refugee law. We're getting questions about work permits, study permits, extending your stay in Canada, arriving in Canada, supporting family members who need to come to Canada, and making refugee claims, and also finding a permanent path to residency here. We are also getting calls about a variety of issues that people are facing after their arrival, including housing, employment, family law, and consumer protection issues. Like our other clients, Ukrainian nationals return to the hotline as their needs evolve. For example, many would initially contact us with an immigration question and then call back a few months later to talk about a new legal problem, perhaps a housing issue. The hotline is a wonderful first point of contact for people because it offers an easy way to get in touch with a lawyer. That lets you get some basic legal advice. It helps people assemble documents and put together the documents that they need to support an application. And it also allows us to connect them to complementary services around the country, be that social, religious, or settlement organizations. The Ukrainian Bar Association has been an incredible partner in this work. They have generously offered their support and expertise. They have been essential to volunteer recruitment and to raising awareness about the service. And so we thank them for that help. I think that for many people, the idea that a hotline can have a significant impact is sometimes a bit hard to comprehend. But what we know from our programming generally is that the impact of a person being able to reach a lawyer and talk to them about their situation is significant. For the majority of our clients, the hotline is the first opportunity that they have had to connect with a lawyer and to learn firsthand about their legal rights and options. We conducted research recently which showed that 72% of our clients were able to resolve their legal matters using the hotline alone. And we know from conversations with our clients every day that that initial conversation that sets out their legal rights and options provides a measurable relief, particularly to people facing difficult problems. The impact of that, I think, is only multiplied for those like the Ukrainians we are able to help, who must navigate a new legal system in a new country. Beyond that, I think the importance of the hotline and providing these services to people as they arrive is part of a demonstration of Canada's commitment to the rule of law and to access to justice as fundamental planks of a democracy. We are pleased and proud to contribute to an environment where Ukrainians can rebuild their lives, contribute meaningfully to new communities, and envision a future filled with hope and opportunity. We are happy to be here to spread the word about this program and help connect people who need it to our service. And we want to thank the government for the support and the financing to make this possible. Together, we know we're making a significant impact in the lives of those that are seeking refuge and assistance in Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsti, and thank you very much for the work you and Oya and others on the team are doing at Pro Bono Ontario. And with that, I'll turn it over to the team from the Ministry of Justice Communications and let them lead the Q&A.
Great, thank you. We will now begin the question and answer session. Nous allons maintenant amorcer la période de questions et réponses. Nous allons d'abord répondre aux questions dans la salle, puis nous passerons aux questions sur Zoom. So we'll first take questions in the room, and then we'll go to questions on Zoom. For journalists on Zoom, please add your outlet to your name so we can identify you. Donc, pour les journalistes sur Zoom, veuillez ajouter votre point de vente à votre nom afin que nous puissions vous identifier. As usual, we'll go with one question, one follow-up. Le format est d'une question et une suivi. S'il vous plaît, posez vos questions dans la langue officielle de votre choix. So feel free to ask your questions in either official language. If you are joining us virtually, a reminder to please raise your hand to indicate you would like to ask a question. N'oubliez pas de lever votre main virtuelle pour poser une question virtuelle. So we'll start in the room.
Bonjour, Myrna Djukic pour Radio-Canada. La question est pour Monsieur le ministre. J'aimerais savoir si vous pouvez nous dire un peu l'ampleur des besoins au niveau de la communauté ukrainienne et jusqu'où vous pensez que ce financement, qui est somme toute de 475 000 $ sur 3 ans, va aller pour répondre aux besoins en ce moment?
Donc, merci beaucoup pour la question. Ce que je peux mentionner, c'est que vous savez que on a promouvoir une politique d'immigration pour les Ukrainiens qui sont en train de confronter les problèmes en Ukraine elle-même à cause de l'invasion illégale par Poutine. Donc, on a reçu plus d'1 million des applications pour les personnes. Quelques-unes des centaines de milliers ont arrivé ici. Ce qu'on a entendu avec leur établissement ici, c'est que effectivement il y a des défis pour eux de combler quelques-unes des défis quotidiennes pour les personnes et pour leurs familles, c'est-à-dire avec le système de santé, avec le système d'éducation, avec les recherches d'un logement, avec les recherches d'un emploi. Et ce que je viens d'apprendre, par exemple avec les conversations que je viens d'avoir avec Ola et avec Kirsti, c'est-à-dire que pour eux, ils ont besoin pas nécessairement d'un avocat à temps plein, mais une assistance et quelques-uns des conseils pour être dans la bonne voie, pour combler les défis qui sont devant eux. Donc, c'est-à-dire que oui, avec à peu près 500 000 $ de l'argent dans une période de 3 ans, ça va aider les programmes gérés par Pro Bono Ontario de jumeler un avocat d'une façon bénévole avec une personne qui ont besoin d'assistance. Et avec cette jumelle, this twinning, on peut effectivement assister les gens avec leurs problèmes d'établir les personnes et leurs familles ici d'une façon où ils peuvent réussir ici au Canada pour le moment qu'ils restent ici.
All right, and I'll ask my follow-up in English. I think it would be best answered by Pro Bono itself. If you can respond in French, feel free to, but I wonder I understand the hotline was already in place, so with this new funding, will you expand the services? Will it help you maintain the services? What exactly how are you planning to use it?
So it's an expansion of service. Our hotline is a provincial program, and so this funding is being used to offer the national program available to Ukrainian nationals. And so it is new staff, new services, all new stuff. Ola, do you want to add anything to that?
What I would just add to that is that we know that tens of thousands of Ukrainians fleeing persecution have settled outside of Ontario, particularly in the prairies. So the fact that we can take this program and make it national is very, very instrumental in meeting the needs that I was mentioning. Merci.
Hey, good morning, Minister Malhamidi of the Canadian Press. I want to ask you about the original emergency visa program that was set for Ukrainians when the war started 2 years ago. That program wasn't initially set up as a refugee program. Are you now encouraging Ukrainians in Canada to apply for refugee status?
So that's an important distinction, and in terms of the language that we've used since the start, is that this is not a classic refugee movement. People are coming here through an emergency travel authorization that we put in place shortly after the second invasion commenced. And we put in place that emergency travel authorization on the understanding that people were not coming here as refugees in terms of the traditional international legal definition under the Geneva Convention, but they were coming here for temporary safe haven from fleeing persecution. That remains the status of the group of people that have come to the country, and that remains the basis upon which the program was constructed. So in terms of strict international law, this is not a refugee movement of individuals. This is a temporary travel authorization to allow people to establish themselves here temporarily, knowing that many of them will be returning back to their home country.
Okay. So given the big number of Ukrainians in Canada right now, the current immigration levels plan in this country does not seem to be able to absorb the number of the refugee or like the newcomers from Ukraine under its humanitarian streams and refugee streams. Is the government considering a different pathway to permanent residency for Ukrainians newcomers who don't want to return to Ukraine?
So I would defer specific questions about sort of pathways to permanent residency to my colleague, Minister Miller, but what I would say to you is that we have immigration levels plans that we've already promoted and made quite clear to the Canadian public. That is reaching the level of approximately 500,000 permanent residents. There are different categorizations. There's a humanitarian stream, there's an economic stream, there's a family reunification stream. What I do know from having spoken with Ola and others who are actually administering this incredible program through Pro Bono Ontario is that sometimes that comes with assistance for immigration purposes that helps people resolve their status. Is it possible that some of these people that have come here temporarily may decide that they want to carve out a new life here? Yes, it is, but I'm very confident in our ability to integrate those people, to give them status legally should they desire it, partly on the strength of the incredible assistance that's being provided by groups like Pro Bono Ontario and the incredible hospitality that's been shown by the Hermada. And I'm using that because Yvan coaches me on Ukrainian all of the time, but the Ukrainian diaspora that exists here has been overwhelming in their support in terms of helping people to establish themselves should they choose to do so. But again, the conception of the plan was temporary safe haven for people that are likely going to return. If some decide to study, stay, perhaps meet a new partner, carve a life here, obviously those options are available and we'll find a way to make that happen. Yes,
All right, we're going to pass to questions on Zoom. If you're a reporter and would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. Donc, si vous avez une question, n'hésitez pas de relever votre main virtuelle et vous pouvez poser une question. Minister, we have a question in the chat from Aidan McNabb, and I'll read it out. So what are the main types of legal issues Ukrainian refugees deal with in Canada?
Okay, so I'll take a stab at this, but I'll also turn it over to either Kirsti or Ola to contribute. I think people that are arriving, as I mentioned in my earlier statement, people that are arriving are just faced with the daily challenges of establishing life in a new country on another side of the world under a different system of law, a different political and legal culture. So this means things that are as mundane as basics about grocery shopping, getting a healthcare card, having your kids well placed in school, finding safe and secure housing, searching for employment. These are some of the basic needs that people have, but Ola could perhaps offer some idea about some of the specific inquiries that they are receiving.
Thank you. So it's important to say that when we say these refugees from Ukraine, not all of them are going to apply for refugee status, but all of them are going to need some information and support when they're arriving. And a lot of the calls we are getting is from people that are only planning to arrive in Canada. So they want to know, are they going to be able to get a work permit upon entry? Are they going to be able to get health coverage and put their kids in school? And they want to know this even before they come. They also want to know where they're going to look for housing and how they're going to apply for a job. So we serve as a first point of contact for a lot of people. Actually, in some big airports, they even get information with our phone number, so they can call and they can ask all these questions. And then as people arrive, the first thing that they need to make sure they have is the valid immigration status. And again, it's not necessarily a refugee status, but it's a temporary resident status that allows them to be legally in Canada. And we help them by explaining how that works, and also we often help them extend that status, because sometimes people come and because they're so in a rush, they may not have a valid passport or their passport is expiring soon. So that's going to mean that their status is expiring soon. And we help them understand how to extend that, how to remain legally in Canada, and what they need to know. And as they settle in, their needs evolve. Some of them will have landlord and tenant questions. Some of them will have employment questions. We sometimes get calls when they say, I got this contract and I don't know what this means, and can you help me understand it in simple words and in Ukrainian? And so we're there to provide that support and be that first point of contact so people can feel comfortable and as they navigate this. Sometimes people simply don't have where to turn to, so they ask questions like, can I give my SIN number to my employer? I'm not sure if I'm allowed to share that. Sometimes they just don't know because the system is so different, and they just need to understand and learn anew. And it's very stressful if you arrive here with young children, if you don't have much time to plan when you arrive. And it's important to understand that these people coming from Ukraine, a lot of them didn't have that time to plan for immigration, didn't have time to figure this out before they come. So having a support like this that provides them with the information right away, soon after they arrive, and then they can call us back for more questions, I think it's very useful and very timely, and it helps alleviate a lot of that stress that newcomers in Canada are dealing with.
All right, and seeing no further, no apologies, we do have one more hand. I'll turn to Laura Osman with the Canadian Press. And Laura, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Good morning, Minister. I wanted to ask you, just to clarify, can Ukrainians who are in Canada now rely on this fund to hire lawyers who can help them navigate a request for PR? And I'm also wondering if the lawyers are starting to see an increase in those kinds of requests.
Okay, thank you, Laura, for the question. What this funding does is it empowers Pro Bono Ontario to work with other pro bono organizations across the country and provide sort of frontline legal assistance for initial inquiries. It doesn't work as a sort of a de facto legal aid system where you're provided with access to a lawyer going forward. It provides sort of what we call summary advice, initial inquiries, those kinds of matters to be clarified for an individual in some of the matters that Ola and Kirsti had mentioned: housing, employment, things like access to the healthcare system, etc. In terms of one's immigration status, if people have inquiries that are initial and brief, what are sometimes called brief services, those are addressed through the pro bono lawyer that is provided. If that turns into the need for having a lawyer on retainer, that is a secondary consideration that comes after the fact. But this funding is provided for those brief services, those initial interventions. It's really for providing the assistance to get people on the right path. It's not meant to sort of provide them with a lawyer that is side by side with them going forward, but just to give them that initial help of those initial steps.
Thanks so much. And to the lawyers with Pro Bono Ontario, are you starting to see an increase in requests from Ukrainians who are looking for information about paths to PR? And what kind of advice is being offered in those cases?
Thank you. We are seeing an increase in questions about people's status in general. Some of it is about permanent residency status, some of it is about understanding how much longer they're going to be able to remain in Canada and with what status, and sometimes it could be about whether they could extend their work permit and what is the option for them for doing so, or can they extend study permits or enroll in the university. What we are offering is summary advice, which helps people understand what their options are. And a lot of the time, people are confused to the point where some of them ask if, me staying a year or two in Canada, how soon will I get my work permit extended, or how soon will I get my permanent residency status? And a lot of the time it's just explaining to them that that's not how it works automatically, and then you have to take active steps to apply in order to extend your status or in order to get a permanent residency status. So helping them navigate that system, and as we're all aware, immigration system in Canada is pretty complicated for somebody that has never dealt with it. So us sending them to appropriate government resources on provincial government websites and also on the Government of Canada websites. We also refer them to legal clinics in the catchment area. And again, not only in Toronto or Ontario, but just nationally in the province that they're residing. So if they need further services, they can speak to a lawyer there locally and get served what they need.
Great, thank you. And we have no further questions online, so we will wrap up today's session here. Thank you and merci for all for participating today. And for journalists, if you have further questions about today's announcement, please contact Department of Justice Media Relations at media@justice.gc.ca. Si vous avez des questions complémentaires, veuillez communiquer avec les relations avec les médias au media@justice.gc.ca. Merci beaucoup. Thank you all.